Yo, what's going on, people? It's your boy Ape Huncho, back at you with a throwback case. Now, if you guys have never seen a throwback case before, it's a series I created where we take an in-depth look at some trials that have happened in the past that normally surround UK drill rappers or rappers in general. So if you do have anyone that you want me to cover in a future throwback case, let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to look into it. So Twin S and Twin H, aka S Twin and H Twin, aka the Terrible Twins, are twin brothers that come from Newham, East London, but more specifically Beckton. Now, unlike other throwback cases where we take a look at rappers who have been wrapped up in cases, the twins are not, but because they've been highly requested, I've decided to cover them. It should be noted though that over the past couple of weeks, footage has started to emerge of the twins rapping, but we'll get into that towards the end of the video. But again, the twins come from Beckton, which makes them a part of what the police label them as the Beckton Boys, but you know them more as the Sixth Gang or ACG. And as you guys know, they're of course affiliated with Sixth Gang rapper Young Diz, who I've covered on the channel before. ACG or Sixth are linked up with Custom House, which makes Southside Newham, and if you didn't know, the Sixth Gang and Custom House mainly beef the Seventh, which consists of the Blackwater Close Estate, or BWC for short, and the Wood Grange Estate, or WG for short, and they also beef CGE and a bunch of other sets. Now, if that confuses you a little bit, in a nutshell, people normally just say the twins are a part of Southside Newham, or SSN for short. The likes of CB and Yanko are a part of Northside Newham, or NSN for short. So it would be at this point on a throwback case where I'd normally take you on a timeline of events through the music career of the person, but again, because the twins don't have no music out officially, I can't do that, but they do appear in some Young Diz videos, and they would be Young Diz vs Terrible Twins Bootins, Young Diz Drill and Repent, Young Diz D-Sav Time Will Tell, Young Diz KO Trouble, Young Diz Kermit, Young Diz Conspiracy Squad, Young Diz on the Mains, and Young Diz Smoky Things. So again, this one isn't going to be the normal style of throwback case, so what we're going to do is we're going to cover both brothers in one video, starting off with Twin H, as his case was dealt with first, and then we'll move on to Twin S's case. On the 21st of May 2018, officers from the Metropolitan Police's Trident Area Crime Command were observing three males who were acting suspiciously around a VW Golf in Britannia Court, Barking, which was owned by 27-year-old Kevin Tashoma. They'd been acting upon intelligence that males were under observation as they were operating as part of a gang which were arming themselves with weapons and making threats to rival gangs via drill music videos. Upon watching the males, they seen Twin H walking into the courtyard because he had appeared from the underground car park, and he was wearing a grey tracksuit, black gloves, and an item of clothing was draped around his head and neck. He would open the door to the car, and it was here he picked up a bag which had Spider-Man printed on it. Twin H is then seen walking back towards the underground car park. Around this time, a 16-year-old boy who can't be named for legal reasons, who police believe was acting as a lookout, was seen standing in the vicinity for a prolonged period of time. Kevin Tashoma, Twin H, and the 16-year-old boy were then seen together in the underground car park for a short period of time, and then Kevin appears to enter an address in Britannia Court. Shortly after re-emerging from the address, he's seen carrying a black bag and a baseball bat. The three, that being Kevin, Twin H, and the 16-year-old boy, then met back at the VW Golf before entering an Audi and driving off together. At this point, Trident officers gained entry to the VW Golf that had been left behind, and inside the driver's footwell they seized the Spider-Man bag, which contained a loaded shotgun, shotgun cartridges, bin liners, a black revolver, and 4 bullets. The Audi was stopped a short while later by armed police at around 5:20 PM, and all three were arrested that same day and taken into custody. Upon searching the Audi, officers found numerous mobile phones, a pair of disposable gloves with gunshot residue on them, 2 walkie-talkies, a baseball bat, and a balaclava. The three would all go on to be charged the next day. All three would be charged with 2 counts of possession of an offensive weapon, possession of ammunition, possession of a loaded revolver with intent to endanger life, and possession of a loaded shotgun with intent to endanger life. There isn't too much details in regards to a super in-depth look at what happened, because it was a fairly simple case by the looks of things, as they were in a sense caught in the act, but in court what I've explained would have been told to the court. What was told in court though was, upon further a forensic examination of one of the cars, I'm unsure which one it was at this current time, a pair of disposable gloves and a machete was found, which had the 16-year-old boy's fingerprints on. On the 14th of June 2019, after a 5-week trial at Snaresbrook Crown Court, the three were found guilty on all charges. Both Kevin and Twin H were handed 13-year jail sentences, and because the 16-year-old boy was sentenced at a further hearing, I'm unsure what he was given due to the fact that no reports were made in regards to his sentencing date. After the sentencing date of Kevin and Twin H, though, Detective Constable Jim Emery said, "These men played an integral part in inciting violence and raising tensions between numerous gangs operating in East London. Our investigation revealed the defendants featuring in a number of threatening music videos and were clearly in possession of large amounts of weapons and ammunition. Tackling this type of gang violence in Beckton has been a priority for our team over the past year, and the community will certainly be a safer place with these dangerous individuals behind bars. I hope today's sentencing acts as a stark reminder to those involved in this type of criminality and highlights our commitment to tackling gang culture and its associated violence in London." Which would then move us on to Twin S. At some point in November of 2018, a man who hasn't been named in reports was handed £10,000 of what the court would go on to describe as illicit money by three men, that being Bruno Ray Cabral Pinto Piera, Kevin Mablek Katunga, and Twin S. The money was given to the victim on the basis that he agreed he was going to flip the money either by reinvesting it, or he agreed to turn it into legit money by laundering it. By the time Christmas 2018 came around, though, it was reported that whatever the victim did with the money, it was gone by that point. After giving multiple excuses and making seemingly empty promises of being able to return the money, Kevin, Bruno and Twin S were tired of waiting for their money or the profits to be returned. They was tired of hearing the excuses, and so they had put a plan together that they would go on to kidnap this victim and beat him up until he found a way of getting their money back. On the 4th of March 2019, Kevin and Twin S decided to put this plan into action and went to go and meet the victim at Pearson's Room Bar in Canary Wharf, and it was here the pair persuaded the victim to get into a car driven by a man known as Olufemi Bayoeyu. Once he got into the car, this is where the punishment would start, because of course he hadn't handed the money over yet. Twin S and Kevin would start to beat the victim up, taking turns continually beating him up, and would even go on to whip him with a belt. According to the victim, he said that allegedly the three forced him to make phone calls to his church pastors, family and friends, begging for money to pay his debts. After trying to get people to pay off the debts and that seemingly not working, the trio then received a text from Bruno, who had told them to bring the victim to a location near to his house, and he asked another quote-unquote gang to come as well. It was said that the extra numbers were brought in to form a force to further terrify and beat the victim so he would pay the money he owed. Before reaching the location near Bruno's house, though, it was suggested by one of the men that the victim should be taken to a quote-unquote private space, which was a flat located in Brixton, which belonged to a person by the name of Kellyanne Quinn. Normally I'd give an account of the arrest which were made, but for the sake of the video, seeing as we're doing it a bit differently, I'm going to take you through what happened as the court heard. Prosecutor Linda Sterwick would go on to tell the court that by this point, the victim's face had begun to swell and was blooded, so it must have been obvious to Kellyanne Quinn that he was not being brought to a flat voluntarily. She went on to say that the victim was immediately taken to the bathroom where he was tortured. Each man took turns to punch and hit him. They forced him to strip and lie in a bath where they scalded his skin with boiling water in a kettle into which acid had been added, and it was heard that burns had covered 4% of the victim's body. The burns were said to be chemical, and they came from a strong mixture of hot water and available household chemicals such as strong alkalines to strong acids such as paint stripper. Some of the victim's hair had also been singed off as a result of the burns. It was heard that the victim screamed and begged for them to stop, and their response was to put a towel into his mouth to quieten the screams. It was heard that the victim was forced onto his hands and knees, and it was here Kevin had used a broom handle to insert it into his anus. The victim would go on to say that he thought he was going to die, he was that terrified. And it was also heard that acid had been aimed at the victim's crotch, but he covered it with his hands in an attempt to protect himself. Describing a photo of the victim to the jurors, the prosecution would go on to say, covering his genitals with his hand, and that injury matches the injury to his thigh. In other words, he's covering them from the acid solution. After several hours of being tortured, it would only come to an end when Kelly Ann would go on to warn the gang that the victim's loud screams would concern her neighbours, and so he was released in the early hours of the morning on the condition that he needed to find the money by midday, and at no circumstances was he to approach the police about what had taken place. But as soon as he spotted a nearby police car in Kings Avenue, he caved in and asked for help. In police video footage shown to the court, it depicts the victim saying, "I was punched repeatedly and whipped with a belt. I was in a bathtub and they poured boiling hot water from a kettle on my body and I have burns." Bruno, Kevin, Olafomi, Twin S, a man by the name of Ibrahim Sana, and Kelly Ann would all go on to be arrested, and they were all charged with false imprisonment. Kevin, Bruno and Twin S were all charged with further counts of kidnap, robbery and blackmail. Kevin was also charged with a further account of sexual assault. Eventually though, after a trial was held at the Old Bailey, they were all found guilty of all charges brought against them, but Kellyanne and Ibrahim were found not guilty on all charges brought against them. After the hearing, Detective Sergeant Paul Connolly, who led the investigation, said this was a brutal and sustained attack which left the victim fearing for his life. Over a period of hours, he was held against his will and subjected to horrific violence, his ordeal only ending due to fears that neighbours would hear his screams. Whatever the events that preceded this, there is absolutely no justification for violence. I commend my team for the painstaking hours they committed to this investigation and the lengths they went to in bringing these offenders to justice. Thanks to their diligent work, a group of dangerous individuals have been convicted and will now face a significant period of time behind bars. So in regards to a sentencing hearing for Twin S, I can't actually find one, but according to a live stream he did from jail in March of this year, he would go on to say that he could be released as early as next year if parole goes ahead, but again, we'll have to see where that one goes. In regards to an interview or anything like that, the best you're going to get is that same Instagram live from way back in March of this year. And like I said at the start of the video, Twin S did preview a snippet of a song, and here it is, check it out.
ACG, there's no gimmicks. Man hopped up the right and slapped it. Man didn't wait for my bro to spin it. I raised the young G's in the ends. I gave them stengs. I made them killers. My first king was a 410 shotty, skinny and long like Ferb and Phineas. Man, no, my man and my word.
Only a couple of months ago as well, a Times investigation was released where they took a look into the murder of Corey Jr. Davis, or CJ Davis for short, and it was heard for the first time since the case was opened that both twins were arrested in connection with his murder alongside young Diz, but they went on to be released with no further action as there wasn't any evidence that could link them to the case.
Who has come under suspicion for CJ's murder?
The police have never charged anyone or named any suspects, but we can now reveal the names of 3 of the 4 men arrested earlier in this case. All of these men were released without charge due to a lack of evidence. The first is Isaac Donko. He's known as Young Diz. According to a cache of police documents first leaked to me 2 years ago, Scotland Yard requested the deletion of one of Young Diz's rap videos, and a note was added to Crimint, which is a police intelligence database for London. The note made it clear that at that stage, Donko was a suspect, and the police believed that the video was relevant to the murder. The video was called Kermit. Donko was released without charge. It's believed he would have been recovering from his injuries. He was stabbed and shot 2 weeks before CJ was murdered.
So that's one man, Young Diz. Who are the other 2 that were arrested and released without charge?
The 2 other men arrested are twin brothers. When Young Diz was stabbed and shot, he was targeted outside the home of twin brothers called Hafed and Sabir Rashid. They're known on the street as Twin H and Twin S.
But yeah, that was the twins case. I know a lot of you requested this one, so there it is. And again, if you do want me to look at anyone in a future throwback case, let me know down in the comment section below, and again, I'll be sure to look into it. But if you like this series, give the video a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think of this down in the comment section below. And if you want the latest drill, street and music news out of the UK, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your boy Huncho, and I'm out.